like to call the meeting to order. Could we stand for the pledge of the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to welcome our acting superintendent, Joe DeBarbary, for a period of time here. We just appointed him tonight. Welcome, and he's sitting up front. So,
thank you. On behalf of Superintendent McDonald, we're excited this evening to recognize our unbelievable Baldwinsville Bees marching band. So I'm going to highlight a few interesting facts with regard to the Rose Parade, the Tournament of Rose Parade, and then we have a video that was put together from staff members highlighting this awesome group's trip. So first off, it's unbelievable. We know the support that you have provided as parents and family members and community members to this unbelievable event for our students. So we thank you for that. On behalf of the board, Superintendent McDonald, thank you again for this awesome experience for our students. So the 131st Annual Tournament of Rose Parade happened January 1st, 2020 in Pasadena, California. This group represented our district, our county, our state, and our nation in this unbelievable event. 133 students participated in the parade. They fundraised, they practiced for more than a year, probably close to 2, right? Unbelievable time, energy, and effort was put forth in making this a reality. And I know all of us can speak to the fact that we hear you practice, we see you practice, we know the long hours, the hard work, the dedication. It's not easy. And knowing the fact that you had a parade route that was of excess of 5 miles is what I'm told. My feet hurt just thinking about that. Let alone trying to play an instrument and march and do all that. We can't do that. I know I can't, and I know a lot of these folks can't do it either. So kudos to you on an outstanding job. Also important to note that this group also is being recognized, hopefully will be the People's Choice for the Syracuse Area Music Association Awards. If you didn't vote, shame on you. You should have voted last night, like most of us. But we're excited and hopeful that this group will be recognized by that group shortly. Also, it's important to note that Mr. Vanderstow was also nominated, and he will be inducted in the Syracuse Area Music Awards Hall of Fame on Thursday as the Music Educator of the Year. So congratulations to him as well. And I'm looking for Sarah, there she is, with the how many videos and tweets we've had with regard to this. But all I can say is that this is the largest social media presence that we've ever had in the district with regard to any event, any team, any group, any organization. So awesome job.
So the main video that we posted immediately after you guys passed the media tower has more than 100,000 views, which is amazing. It's more views than Syracuse.com videos get. It's more views than any of our videos combined. But from the trip alone, all of the videos, all of the tweets, all of the Facebook shares, it's clear that the public was invested in your visit, and they were waiting for every update that we posted. So great job.
We would also like to thank Mike Wells, a community member who sacrificed his time and energy during the holiday season as our driver of our equipment van across the country and back, and he made it back in time for them to also participate in the Dome shortly thereafter that Rose Bowl event. So thank you to him for his dedication to these students here. And before we watch the video, I would like to have the drum majors come forward. Viviana Vanderstowe and Claire Siddell. And I'd like to present the two of you for the band a plaque that will hang in the high school recognizing this outstanding achievement. It says the Baldwinsville Central School District Excellence Award presented to the Baldwinsville Marching Band in recognition of an outstanding performance at the 131st Annual Tournament of Rose Parades in Pasadena, California, January 1st, 2020. Congratulations. Good job. Awesome job. So Mrs. Buckshot will get a photo in a moment with everybody, but let's all turn to the screen here and we will relive this outstanding moment.
Pride! Bville!
Here are the Baldwinsville Marching Bees, 140 members strong. These community players bring a big and enthusiastic sound to this year's parade. Welcome.
This band, yes. Baldwinsville Marching Bees. I used to live in Baldwinsville, New York. Oh, wow. After I graduated from SUNY Oswego, it's the Baldwinsville Marching Bees.
come true. It was obviously really long and hot, but the crowds were really into us, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, it hurt, for one. The weather wasn't too bad. I thought it was going to be a lot hotter, but it was pretty cool. It was a lot of uphill, which also hurt. But my chops maintained, and I think we did well. So
It's a lot of pride, and a lot of people on the parade route knew where Baldwinsville was or asked us about it, and they were very excited. So all the kids knew that everybody was watching at home, and it gave them the energy to keep going.
It was exhilarating. Honestly, it was amazing.
To the community, I hope you're as proud as we are of these kids. And they've represented Baldwinsville on a national stage and done it with a lot of grace and dignity. And I hope everybody's as proud as I am.
Parents in the audience, grandparents, family members, thank you for the sacrifice that you provided for these students to participate in this outstanding event. Thank you to the instructors, and thank you for your support also for our program. We couldn't do this without you. I'm sure Casey would like to say a few words as well, but most importantly, thank you to all of our students. You really set the bar. If you're a senior and you're going off, awesome job. If you're an underclassman looking for what's up next, we're excited where you take us now that we've made it on this international stage. So again, congratulations to the students, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Vanderstow.
So I just wanted to take this moment to thank the Board of Ed for supporting this activity. I think that it really does take a whole community, and to be on that stage, first of all, these kids represented incredibly well the entire time. Everybody here would be so proud of them, how they acted on the trip and the flight, and just it was a lot of stress, and they handled it really, really well. On the video, it was, if I was narrating it, it would have made a little more sense, but going around that first corner, it doesn't look like much, but ABC or NBC is here with Al Roker. There's a 9-story media tower to the right that is full of cameras. Sarah was on that platform, so she can tell you. And when we turn around the corner, we're getting the sun in your face. Those were all people as far as you could see, and it went for a good 5 miles. So to have not just the endurance, but the maturity to handle that, and you know, in my view, I mean, I could tell stories all night, but when we were lined up, it was really surreal for me to have the University of Oregon and then a 600-piece band from Mexico, the Baldwinsville Bees, and the University of Wisconsin all lined up together. I mean, who would have ever thought that that would happen? And for the kids to have the maturity to handle themselves should make everybody proud for a long time. And the last thing I'll say is it was hard, as endurance for everybody to go that far and to know, you know, that you really, when we did Macy's, it was the same thing. There was so much pressure because you know that millions of people are watching. And to go the length of the parade route, what you're not seeing is mile after mile after mile, and the physical, the rigorous demands of that to keep performing. And you just see people forever. And at one point in the parade, about a mile down the road, I saw this disturbance, and I wasn't sure what I was looking at. And as we got closer, I realized that that was a section of people from Baldwinsville. And many of you were in that group, losing your minds, and it was truthfully one of the proudest experiences I've ever had. And I know it gave the kids, right, a jolt of energy that got us through the rest of the parade. But that was a real moment for Baldwinsville, and I want to thank everybody here for being a part of that.
So again, congratulations and go Bees. We'll get one picture, and we thank you again, everyone, for all of your support, and have a great evening.
Okay, moving on to correspondence board activities. It's always hard to follow marching band. So we have Funding the Future Committee. Jamie?
I thought we had a really good meeting. This is our second meeting, and we're kind of working on a direction, what direction to go. We're going to make a trip to SED in April to talk to them about state aid and about what we might be able to do with the money we think is available. Will the state, the big question is, will the state aid a brand new school building, which we'd like to do. So we're going to have that conversation, and the next meeting on, I believe, is March 11th, and we'll go over the data that we're going to take and show SED when we do make that trip and what our approach is going to be.
So I know during the meeting you mentioned reaching out to SCD. That's the soonest we could get the appointment was April.
We're trying. Well, I've tasked King and King. They know the people. I had a nice long conversation with Mike Schuza last week. He told us who to talk to and who should be at that meeting. So King and King, who has a good relationship with those people, is trying to arrange for that. And as soon as we get the date fixed, we'll schedule and go. So right now we need to do. We need to have Dr. Seversky's report of population. That's one of the things. We need to have PDFs of all the school buildings that we're talking about, so that we can show them how our elementary schools are being used. We have maps that we laid out with that, and the architects are going to clean those maps up a little bit for us and label the rooms. The principals went, as part of that process back in 1819, they labeled every room in their building and what they used them for. So we're going to formalize that a little bit in a set of PDFs that we can hand them on a thumb drive, and they can go look at this, because they're going to have to, after our meeting, go do some analysis to find out how many aidable pupil units we're going to have, and we're going to talk about the age of our two oldest buildings and how we would finance this and what we want to do with their buildings, and see if they'll will aid us on a new school building. So that's the whole thrust. So hopefully by the March 11th, we'll have all that data in hand so we can show the board what the presentation is going to be made that we're going to make with them, and then we'll go schedule the meeting. Meanwhile, we continue to talk about what other things we might want to do in the other buildings beyond just building a new school building, and what we might want to put on that. We've asked Mr. Rick Foder, to go when he's giving his building visits with the head custodians and the building principals, to ask them what they would like to see, and we're going to have them prioritize the list that we got from our building condition survey a few years ago, and let them kind of rank those things in their buildings, because they live in their buildings every day. In an ideal world, what would you like to see first, second, and third, and put numbers against that list for each building. So we're going to be working on that in the next couple of weeks as well. So that's going to take a lot of work building up to this, but we'll get there. So we just got to do some of the groundwork and continue to talk to people. So it'll come together. I'm an optimistic person about this kind of stuff. I think we just have to go make our case. And really, if the state says no, they won't do this, we'll just reload and we'll do something else. I don't think the need of our facilities being better is going to go away. It's just how we do it, and how can we maximize the aid and keep the cost to the taxpayer as reasonable as possible. I think is that the best way to phrase it? Right. Thank you.
Okay, next, we have special Board of Education meeting on the 27th. And the 27th, there was a culture festival. Did anyone get a chance?
So I attended Culture Festival with my 3 kids. It was an amazing night. They had a fantastic time. I had a great time. I especially liked the flyer that was handed out, or it was on a table before you went upstairs. It had conversation starters, so that was fantastic. The kids did an amazing job. Like, they had conversations with my 6-year-old. Like, it was wonderful. It was a great night. So good job to everybody that put that on.
Yeah, lesson learned for me, I went after my son's practice, and in 7:30 I thought I was just going to hop through all the tables, and 15 minutes at the first 2 tables, and they started tearing down. So definitely go earlier next year, because it was the kids, the families that were there at each of the different countries. they were very engaging, so you need a lot of time to get through it. But so anyway, it was great done, very well done, and I think every year it gets better. So.
I unfortunately couldn't attend this year. I did last year, and it was wonderful. But I did see Aiden Priest on Saturday. He was sitting on the bench for the modified volleyball tournament all day at CNS, and I did talk to him about this. And I just like his forward thinking. He already has that plan in place for next year. He said he had a 10th grader who shadowed him to keep it going and making it even better every year. And he had a lot of positive things to say about it. As I said, you know, I saw it on Facebook that you had attended, and the pictures that I saw were great. It looks like the kids really enjoy themselves.
Yep. My first bullet is the Culture Fest, and from the student perspective, I mean, I had a lot of friends who were involved, and I'm friends with Aiden, and to see how much work each of those students not only put into having the booths, but how passionate they were was really great to see. I went to the Culture Festival, and I saw so many students there that just went to check it out, meet new people, and it was really great. And there's an exchange student right now from Japan, and she had an amazing booth, and it was really great to interact with her and have her teach us about her culture, because she's right now experiencing ours. So it was really, really great to have that interaction. And what Aiden has done is absolutely amazing, and I'm really, really happy it's going to continue. Right before break, Positivity Project had a Spirit Week, and it was, from what I've heard, because I missed the second half, but everyone was really involved. For some reason, the high school goes all out for Spirit Week, and we're all in, which is very good. And the coffee shop just opened as well. And I stopped by for some I stopped by for some hot chocolate, and it was absolutely amazing. The students love it. It's so great to have that opportunity to get something quick to help jumpstart some kids in the beginning of the day. Also, I strongly encourage everyone to get tickets for Cinderella if you haven't already. I stopped by and checked out the set around 5 p.m. today. They just started Tech Week. The set is absolutely gorgeous. They have some pieces out right now, and they're testing lighting, but it's beautiful. It's some of the best set pieces I've seen I've seen 4 musicals in a row now, so it's gorgeous. There was also the pasta dinner hosted by the Junior Council, which was very delicious. I encourage, there's another one coming up for Sophomore Council, and the involvement in that would really help out their club. And lastly, the Baker Talent Show is on March 27th, hosted by the Senior Council, which will feature student acts, and we plan to have a Family Feud segment at the end, and we're inviting Michael Pope, the principal at Ray, to come back to Baker to host. So we're excited for that as well.
Thank you, Jordan. Always love your reports. Do we have any requests to speak, Jamie?
There are no requests to speak.
I need approval of the consent agenda pursuant to the attached. I need a motion. Kim, Jeff, any questions on it? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried 8-0. Move on to leadership report.
So we're going to go ahead and start with the annual fire safety inspection report, and we have Rick Foderer here for that.
All right, good evening. Last year during September is when they did their walkthroughs doing fire and safety inspections for all the buildings that we have, along with the public library. It was done by Mr. Sean Dunlap, our BOCES safety officer, along with Steve Rosenberg. When they went through with the head custodians and the building principals, and they noted any discrepancies that they had, brought it up to the building principals and the head custodians to get them all taken care of. At the end of their reporting period, all nonconformities were addressed, and we did pass all our fire safety inspections, which was good. They did put together a report that I worked on with Sean, listing the nonconformancies that are listed right there under section 5 up on the board. There were certain things that were kind of common from building to building, a lot of things we see on a normal basis. Storage on top of cabinets exceeding the 24 inches or 18 inches in sprinklered areas, and issues with extension cords and things like that are relatively common from building to building that we do work with the building principals and the custodians on a regular basis trying to get that corrected. But overall, the buildings did well, and I'll take any questions that you have, of course.
Any questions?
Okay. Got roll with that. Is that next on the list, or? Okay, I'll come back.
Sorry.
I'm not out yet.
Thank you, Rick. So we have Jamie and Tiffany are just going to give a quick update on the capital project report.
Okay. High school kitchen and serving lines, along with a cafe at one end. They started serving wraps last week. The panini press were hot. They sold 350 paninis on last Thursday, so it was fun. On Friday, I went over and spent an hour. I watched one full lunch period and half the fourth, all the third one and half the fourth one. I ended up having a panini made for me by the staff, and it was really good, and I could see why the kids like it. So whether it's a fad or not, it really looks nice. The staff likes working there. It's really amazing. So they've only been fully functional in the kitchen for, today was the third day. So it's going to take us probably another week or two to figure out how to get the lines a little smaller and meet the kids' requests, but it is pretty exciting. So at the new transportation facility, we are working our way through the punch list. It's fully occupied. They moved students out of there last Monday for the first time, and they're still working on getting their times down. It would be helpful if we could get our exempt railroad tracks. We have a couple of them we're working on with the Empire State Development Corporation. If we could do that, the arrival times at Baker to do the Baker-Durkee run at the end of the day would be a little quicker. So, but we're getting there. The staff was great. We had a thank you breakfast this morning and welcome back to school with the staff over there, and gave out pins for both transportation and for the facility staff. And that was really well received. It was nice, breaking bread with those folks and having a conversation, and they ask questions, but they're really happy to be working in our new facility. So the one major thing left to do over there is to finish the fuel island. So the electrician's working hard trying to get that done, because we need to have that inspected in the next couple of weeks so we can get our certificate of occupancy for the whole site. So other than little things we're working through, nothing major left to be done over there. And nothing really major to be left done at the, the Baker Kitchen, with the exception of building the storage room that's underneath the principal's office that's for the custodians to use, and we're working with technology teachers at the high school to have the students do a bunch of that work. So we're going to buy all the materials and supplies in the next few weeks and have it there. As soon as the weather breaks, we'll have a mason come and build a knee wall, and then the students will start building the wall. So that's going to be an exciting process. I think I have to pick the color for the siding. It's the only thing left to do. So that's kind of exciting. The custodians really need a place to store stuff, and it's given an opportunity for students to, do the takeoffs on the drawings, how much materials we're going to need, how many studs they're going to do, all those kind of factors. I know that Jamie Kyler is doing that with his class. So it's going to be kind of a fun thing for the kids to do. Other than that, they're trying to get the gate to work and some of the intercom stuff to work. And little things, it's the last 2% of the job that takes the longest time, as usual. But.
Do you have a date yet for doing a community open house or anything like that for the transportation center?
Not yet. We were just trying to plan and wait until everything was done and we could be fully operative there, including the fuel island. I have taken some of the town fathers around, members of both the town of Lysander board, the town of Van Buren. I have yet to get the village board to come and look and do a tour, because I would like to start doing some business with them managing their fleets. We really need to get the fuel island done. To answer your question, probably in March when the weather gets a little nicer, March or early April, pick a Saturday and have hot dogs and stuff, and have some of the mechanics there to talk about how they use the thing and have a full open house for the community.
I'll work with Sarah and put that schedule together and what we're going to do that day. I think we should really do it. I know Channel 3 wants to come out this week and interview myself and Dana about occupying the new place. So it's kind of a chance to showcase what we did. We did put all those nice photographs that I sent the board up online, so you can see those of both facilities. They really turned out nice. So that's it. Any questions? Thank you.
So next we have Jamie and Tiffany wanted to give a quick little update on a potential for an assistant business manager position.
Yes, as part of our, I'm going to take my glasses off for a second. As part of our transition plan for when I retire next January, there is a position built into the current budget under the administrative budget that would be an assistant business official to take over from Tiffany the budget, building and management, plus the purchasing, what she's been doing for now. Remember, she really replaced what Patty was doing for us. And Patty retired a year ago, and Tiffany stood in. So there's probably an extra $25,000 in the budget that's going to take us through the transition, because once my salary ends, then that new person will just pick up, and it'll just be the two folks managing the business office. But until then, you'll have three of us. So that does distort our budget for this year. What else was I going to say about that? Oh, so it's our intention, what we'd like to do is start interviewing and searching for that position, and maybe have that person start work in the summer, like in July of 20, so that person has a good 5 or 6 months to work with Tiffany and myself, and I'll be a road warrior and go down and work at transportation, or at the old transportation building, in order, because my focus is going to be funding the future as we go through this. So the new person will have some time with Tiffany and myself, both being available to advise and consent, and then we'll work on funding the future, whatever the vote's going to look like in February. That's what my focus is going to be. And then when I'm gone in February 1st of 21, then that new person and Tiffany. So now you'll be back to the same two people that are in the office right now. So that's kind of what our proposal is to make that transition.
Great idea. Do you have any budgetary estimates yet for the new position?
It's already in there.
Oh, you've already built it in?
Already built it in.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So I anticipated your acquiescence. Let's put it that way.
I set you up for that.
But that's to get an idea of how that is going to work. That's all. I just want everybody to understand what we were trying to accomplish, and then so I can fade off into the sunset. But then you will have two very competent people sitting there and doing the job. So our hope is to just go start recruiting people and get someone here that's interested in coming and doing a similar job to what's going on. Do you have anything to add to that?
I would just add that we really, in this past year, I've taken on a lot of the reporting for the ESSA and how important that is with tracking our budget by building. And we felt it was important to try to find someone for this position who has some budgeting background and understanding of some of that state reporting and the new requirements.
We have two new reporting requirements. We just finished one over the weekend. We got to submit that tomorrow, and that's to the federal government. That's what we actually spent in 18-19. And we did one in the last summer in August that was to the state of New York of what our budget was going to be for 19-20. So now these are going to be two. Like normally, what we'd have is usually have the SD3 that we report, in September, October every year, which is the main state budget report where we report the prior year's expenses, and then we send them our financial statements, and that kind of fixes our aid for that following year that we're already in. So that was our main focus, and now we got two more biggies to do. It's gotten, in addition to the last 2 years, we struggled with the ESSA and doubling the number of the pages in our financial reports and all that stuff, trying to develop codes, and we're tracking. We used to have one subcode for all TAs, and now I got 8 subcodes. So doing this stuff and making transfers until you can normalize the budget, that's complicated, and it does take a lot of work to do to make sure it balances and you're giving them accurate information. It may be more than an academic exercise, so you got to put the time in to make sure it's accurate. You can't just willy-nilly throw stuff in there. So it's critical going forward that we have somebody who has a little bit of knowledge on how to do that, because you need another set of hands and eyes to do it. More than one person.
So related to the budgeting, and just so I can understand the organizational structure. It says in here, once budgets are finalized, the assistant budget manager inputs and rolls over budgets in the financial software. Is that a typo or is that a different position? Is that supposed to say the assistant business manager inputs and rolls over budgets, or is there another position that's the assistant budget manager? It's in the summary, about halfway down.
You got it, I can't see it. Oh, here it is. Well, assistant business manager, it's just a misnomer. We're struggling at one point on trying to figure out what we could call the title because of civil service. Yeah. So civil service is making us call it an assistant business official as opposed to what we said, assistant budget manager. So.
Okay, so it's this position. That's all. I just wasn't sure if
Yeah,
there was
no, we're not
another position.
we're not having a third position. No, that's correct.
So the next item on the agenda was the Safety and Mental Wellness documentary. And after further review with legal counsel, what that was supposed to be was an opportunity for the district to work with some filmmakers to kind of showcase all the work that we've done within the district with regard to safety and mental health and wellness. And after further review, we're not going to be reporting on that this evening. We're actually going to retract that opportunity because after review with legal counsel, it would be in violation of commercial use of our school facilities and a gift of public funds. So that report is coming off. So we apologize for putting that on there. I do have two other things to add, though. Quickly, I'll start with the quick one. Chris Campolita did provide us with an update with regard to athletics. And so, again, congratulations to Maddie Brooks, who was a girls gymnastics participant. She was a member of the Section 3 girls gymnastics team, which won the overall New York State Public High School Athletic Association gymnastics meet this past weekend. So congratulations to her. For representing Baldwinsville within Section 3. Also, you're probably well aware of the fact that the boys and the girls varsity basketball teams both won their semifinal round in the sectional championship this past weekend on Sunday at OCC. They will compete this coming Saturday, 5 o'clock for the girls and 8 o'clock for the boys. So we wish them well in the sectional championships. The girls play CNS, and the boys will play Corcoran at 8. We also have competing this weekend boys and girls indoor track and field. They will compete in the state championships on Staten Island. On Saturday, boys swimming will be competing on Long Island on Friday and Saturday, and then the boys bowling championship will be Friday, March 13th through Sunday, March 15th. The championship site for that is local. It's Strike and Spare on Brewerton Road in Syracuse. So we wish all those athletes luck. And then the final piece, this has come out recently with regard to travel with the coronavirus. I just wanted to bring and kind of get a sense from where the board stands. So we do have currently a trip that's scheduled to go to Germany, Prague, Czech Republic, and Budapest on April 1st or 2nd. And we want to get a sense of where we're at given, there's still a lot of uncertainty. We're working right now with the travel agency because they're within we're in the 45-day window for when the trip embarks. There's no way to get refunds. There's the possibility of travel vouchers, but we're still working through that. The travel vouchers could be an issue because these areas, while this is occurring in countries, it's not considered a level 3 zone, which is what they're using as a basis for giving refunds or redirecting or rerouting or moving trips. So we're waiting for the contract because the board did approve this trip. That might be something that we think about moving forward with trips overseas. I don't think we have to act on anything this evening. We have the March 16th meeting. Hopefully that gives us a little bit of time, but we really wanted to know what your position is with regard to this, because there will be an impact either way, whether we choose to continue to let the students participate in the trip. From what I'm told, there is the possibility that the board could rescind the trip, say that it's no longer school sanctioned, and if families sign waivers, according to the organization, they've seen that occur in other districts. We haven't run that by our legal counsel yet, so we would be doing that between now and the next board meeting. So it's not a good position to be in, but ultimately, for the safety of the students, we might be forced to make some decisions.
So, quick question, or clarifications. They're typically travel insurance, so if I understand correctly, the travel insurance the only way to qualify is if those areas came under a level 3 travel advisory?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And they are protected because of the travel insurance that they have, that if there was an issue and it prevented them from getting back into the country, all of that's supposed to be covered as an unforeseen outcome.
Does the level 3 require the 45 days, or is that any time up until the flight leaves? Because, these things seem to be changing daily, so.
The level 3, according to the agent that I spoke to, that would be covered. So, for example, he gave me a school recently. They were scheduled to go to Italy, and then a day before the trip, they chose to redirect. He gave me another example where there was a group that had just landed, and the school district at that point chose with the advisors, they could have redirected someplace else. They said, no, that's not what we want to do. We want them back. So there's a lot of options that they're doing. It's a reputable company that's been around for over 50 years. Who would have thought that we would be dealing with this? We were approved this, remember, over a year and a half ago. We're to the point where people are locked in.
Joe, the trip is insured, but do the individual students have an additional insurance? Like if one of them gets sick or injured and can't go, so is it like a group insurance and individual insurances?
No, it's for the trip. At this point, they're locked in. So they're covered if they go on the trip and something happens, but there is no reimbursement. My understanding is there's no reimbursement if a child got sick tomorrow and the trip was, Wednesday, they wouldn't be able to be refunded. They more than likely would look to provide a travel voucher for that student to one of their other organizations. They do have adult, they have college level experiences according to what they've told me.
But that wouldn't preclude a student independently buying travel insurance.
That's true.
Okay, now the other thing is a lot of the colleges have brought their students home or have banned their trips, but I hear that's mostly to Italy. And we know there are some hotbeds around the world that are a little more dangerous than others. So I think it's just a waiting game to wait and see. I wouldn't want to deny, the kids the trip. So we just have to wait and see where this pops up in Europe, I guess.
I think what you mentioned earlier, we could, as a board, I forget the word you used, but decline the trip or whatever, and they could still somehow show up at the airport and get on the plane and go, right?
That's my understanding. But again, I'm hearing that from the director of the travel agency that they're working with, the EF Tours. I would want to make sure they're supposed to be emailing us that information. I asked for it to be in writing in the parent letter that gets sent. My hope is that I haven't received it yet. Once we do receive that, that will be reviewed by the legal counsel too, because if, we might be advised by Ferrara that, even with that, we shouldn't be allowing waivers to be signed and excluding that. And then, again, we're forced with a difficult decision, but it is a possibility according to the travel agent.
Well, with track and cross country, we used to travel a lot as a club without any school involvement, totally funded outside the district. But of course, I went as a coach. So if we did that, I don't think you could deny a child to go on a trip if they're going on, if their parents say it's okay, they're going, it's through a private company and so on. The problem would be if our staff members are going. And that's where the rub would come, I think, is that if we had staff members not being here at school when we, disallowed the trip.
So this is over break. Part of the issue is I think we've encouraged the trip, or we advertise for the trip, or our staff members, we as a board approve the trip. So that makes it a little bit more gray. And so we would need more further guidance from council.
Yeah, I guess my initial reaction, I'm with Jim. You kind of, this seems to be evolving day by day, and kind of let it play out for another couple weeks and then come back to it would be my guess. I'd hate to deny them a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but I guess we got to think of other things too. But yeah, I'm with Jim on see what happens when we come back together.
Okay. Everyone okay with that? So we'll just be back with a recommendation where we stand from council at the next board meeting on the 16th. Okay.
And I guess just to clarify, we're not looking at any restrictions on domestic travel right now, right?
No, not at this point.
There's a lot of those trips coming up in the next month.
Yep. That is it for the leadership report.
So now it's review of the facilities budget. Anybody have any questions on the presentation from last week? And you didn't note any changes, Jamie, at this point in time?
Attached to your meeting notes there is a budget, all codes with changes as of 3/2. We're going to talk about this later, but there have been changes all across the budget, and there is a few changes that were made in the facilities budget, but not very big. $989 is the net change there. That shows you that to date all the changes we've made in the budgets that have been presented. So if we hasn't, so tonight you're going to hear instruction and you're going to hear technology, which are big number items, because right now you have $24 million in the budget, and the budget's 114. So obviously instruction is the largest piece because that has the most staff and all those kind of things in it. So.
There's no questions right now on facilities. Nobody has any questions? No one? Okay, so be the general fund instructional and technology budgets.
We're going to go ahead and start with RJ.
Who's running the computer over there? I'm a little scared. Okay, if you scroll me right down to the salaries code. Not to diminish all that great graphing and stuff, but so as we go down the salaries code, there was an increase this year due to contractual obligations, and just a couple of highlights in there. The second budget code, I talked to Tiffany, and that the TA went up from 29 to 37. They included a half of special ed TA and a half of the library TA. It's combined. It might be the same person, but it's a full-time salary down there. The other one that increased, if you go down about 3/4 of the page to the salaries, audiovisual clerical, went from 86.5 to 109. So that's the help desk operator, and they added in partial salary of the auditorium manager is in there too. So that's more than one person, that salary code. So the total is $1,554,740. On to equipment. There's no change there. Stop me and ask questions about any line item you want. On to contractual. A little bit of an increase, and you see a bunch of the library codes that got zeroed out. We're trying to consolidate. There used to be 5 or 6 different library budget codes, and half of them never got used, and they would end up transferring money into this contractual or out of contractual into materials and supplies. So as the years have gone by, if they haven't used those, I've been trying to tell them, take the money that you usually have there and put it in the materials and supplies, because that's what you're actually buying. So hopefully in a year or two, you'll see just 2 codes. It'll be library books and materials and supplies, because that's what they do. A little bit of an increase there. It looks like that came from the software code at Durgee. She does run some different robotics in her makerspace, so she has a need for some software. And down in the library book codes, that went up a little bit for Van Buren, Reynolds. I tell them, be honest, put in there what you need for library books, and a lot of some of it's based, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a per pupil allotment for library books that you have to meet. So if there's a large population in one school over the other, even though it's an elementary building, they might have more kids. You have to take the number of kids and multiply it by the dollar amount, and that's what you're supposed to spend on library books. That's why it looks a little different. Okay, moving right along. Materials and supplies. Yeah, that went up significantly because they did what I asked them to do and put that money from contractual or those software, those other ones, over into this budget so that we cut down on the number of transfers that we're doing for the librarians. And the last bunch of codes are the BOCES codes. That went up a couple $100,000, and that has a lot to do with guesswork on where the coasters are going to come in. We try to, if we don't know what we need to spend, if we don't have the cost of it, we add 4% to the previous years, and hopefully, we come closer. There's a little bit of fund balance in there. That's it. The excitement is over.
Also notice in there, under the tech plan leases, so you have it was 843 in 1819, and now it's 570 this year, and 599 for next year. If you go down a couple codes, the third code down from there is hardware software acquisitions. So we have 392 799 for this year and 395 910 for next year. We always end up with around $800,000 in leases, but they won't let us put that second number up in the top because it's not a lease yet. It's some weird thing we've had to do a few years ago. So you notice how that hardware software acquisitions BOCES is blank for 1819 because in the tech plan non-leasable fees, both of those are zero, and meanwhile on the right you have a couple like $400,000. That's because we're forced to budget it that way because they aren't leases yet. They aren't leases until we buy the equipment and the Board of Education approves the lease, and then the BOCES board approves the lease, and then we transfer the money in during the year. It's a crazy way to run a railroad.
Question about hardware. So there's hardware there and there's hardware someplace else in the budget. Is it
two different
equipment or something? But oh yeah, state aided hardware,
right.
District Tech. So is that replacement, or is there funding in there for anything new? I know we're pretty close to having one-to-one for all the kids, and I know that it was part of your plan to make sure the teachers had access to some equipment.
Yep, so the answer is yes to both your questions.
Okay.
There's replacement in there, and there's also new. The state-aided hardware, again, it's like the library books. It's a certain amount you have to budget per pupil for the state, and that's where that comes out of. And then we have the lease. We would never survive the amount of technology we have just with that state-aided hardware budget. So years ago, way before I got here, the board created this 3-year lease that we've been doing every year. That's the only way we can have all the stuff that we have to this date.
Yeah, that's been going on 15, 18 years now. Once you're in the cycle and you're in the 3-year leases, your budget doesn't change, it's always the same. It just can roll, roll, roll. And that's when you're aging out your equipment and you got to replace, 1/3 of your Chromebooks at a time. That's how we're going to pay for it. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, which is, and RJ and I go through this every year and look what the plan is and what's the lease going to be and what are we going to do. And a lot of it comes out of the tech committee that gives him advice on where we think we're going. But yeah, we do spend a lot of money on technology. But this is a way we do it. And we get BOCES aid, so we get like 75 or 77% money back on the leases. So the net cost of that, if you had 800,000, would be 77%. So you're only paying 23% of taxpayer dollars going forward.
So, looks like on salary, materials, the equipment, those types of things are following those new ESSA reporting requirements by building.
We've always broken them up like that.
Okay.
By building, just so we know,
Right.
allotments.
Yeah, I know in it for instructional, and you guys kind of work together with that, those are new requirements. With the leases, are we exempt from really having to account that way?
The BOCES, yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes, with the BOCES coasters, there's a certain formula that goes into the form when we're planning for that.
And then most of that comes our Chromebooks, our software leases, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, the hardware acquisition there, the $865,000 lease every year, yes, that's 3/4 of, takes care of 3/4 of what we need to do, replacement and new, and then I have the other 200,000. It takes about $1 million a year to keep everything refreshed and add some new things. Moving forward, my challenge is going to be all these smart boards. They're starting to age out, and there's millions of dollars of smart board inventory sitting in classrooms right now.
Yeah, well, and I know we've talked about in the tech committees, you've brought to some other options that are probably better, more user friendly, maybe better equipment. So I'm sure
we're looking
that
right
you'll
now,
be
and in fact, for the next committee meeting, I'll be showing you the results. We've been piloting it. It's hard to pilot these in a big way because they're about $4,500 a piece, but I've been trying to pilot different types of boards, and I've got a couple of teachers helping me to do that. And the only way you can tell if they work well or not is by putting them in a classroom and let them use them for a month or so. So by the time we meet again in April, I'll have a recommendation moving forward of what board we're going to go with.
Right. And I know that you always look at, making sure that we're taking care of every building in the way that they need. I just wasn't sure in terms of, knowing some of those reporting requirements that, if we needed to worry about that, but thanks for answering that question.
Well, with computers too, with the equipment code, it's not necessarily by building that I replace things, because I'll buy a model of computer one year and 4 or 5 years later, I've got to replace that model no matter where they're sitting. So sometimes like half of Van Buren, all of Baker, it depends on where those computers landed. So it would be hard if they made us do that by building. So thankfully they don't. But did you notice the blank look on my face when you asked that question? Because I had no idea.
So I got a question. Last couple of years we've been adding budget to your area to get to the 1-to-1 type levels. Would you say we've achieved that? Now we're just in the maintenance mode, or do we still have some to go here?
No, we're more than 1-to-1. We actually have more Chromebooks than we have kids. We've got 6,123 Chromebooks, and we've got, 5,400, 5,500 kids. But it was necessary to do that to cover, because the way we're doing it is we're keeping them in the schools and in the classrooms. Sometimes there's a cart of Chromebooks in a room with no kids in it that period, but you got to have those Chromebooks where there are kids. So I think it's okay with that, the way we've done it. What we've had to spend on extra Chromebooks, we're making up for by the lack of just destroyed Chromebooks that would happen if they were going home on buses and getting shoved in lockers and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's going to be tight. I mean, this year and the next year, I think we're okay, but we'll probably have to look 3 years out when we really start heavily having to replace Chromebooks and the smart boards, we'll have to, so far we've been able to do it with maintaining about the same amount, but we'll see. Hopefully the prices on these things will come down. Okay, thank you.
On to me. Dave will pull up the instructional. So overall with the instructional, we're looking at about a 3.6% increase from what's being budgeted for the 2019-20 school year. So we'll go ahead and start with the salaries. Specifically, every salary that you see here aligns with the new ESSA requirements, as has already been mentioned, and meets contractual obligations. Contractual obligations, which could be additional stipend pay or salary credit pay, is all included within these codes. You'll notice some shifts. For example, salary supervision, that's going to be all of the directors. We've included the principal and special assignment within that code, so you see a little bit larger of a jump there given salaries. Teachers at Durgee, grade 8, teachers at Baker, grade 10 through 12, and teachers at Ray, grade 7. I'd like to highlight those. What we've attempted to do in this budget is take the breakage from the retirements to potentially add some positions in those buildings. 2 positions specifically at Ray Middle School to support math and science, which we've talked about in prior board meetings with the acceleration program for the additional lab period. And then we're looking at potentially at Durgee and Baker some type of student support position, whether it's a dean or not, but we're not at the point where we're ready to jump. But we wanted to throw that out there as potentials. We always build in additional positions, at least we have, for each budget year because of the fact that we just don't know. And so we're looking, this budget would go up the exact same amount if these folks did not retire. So I do have some information we're looking to share at a future weekly letter, as well as have conversation with the board for specifics with those positions, at least the student support positions, as we move forward before we bring to you any type of recommendation for additional staffing, because there'd have to be a resolution for that.
So you're budgeting for it so that we don't have additional expenses if you identify this need and I'll say justify the need. That's probably not the right word. Yep. So that's the plan. But at this point in time, you don't have any definitive decisions about what you want to do with those positions.
The only ones that we do would be for the math and science, because we have had that conversation. Mm-hmm. And given the fact that, the committees of teachers that have worked on the math committee, the science committee, as well as the acceleration committee, we've had conversations over the last, gosh, it seems like it's been like 2 years, and one of the issues that has always come up is the idea that they need more time with students. And so we, at one point during a conversation, it was proposed that we add the additional time with the lab period to help meet the needs of students in the acceleration program. Think about it, you're taking 2 years worth of content, and currently as it stands, it's over a 1-year period, where this would, in theory, give students a year and a half because of the seat time, which is better than not. This also addresses some of the other concerns that have come up with regard to like mastery and wanting kids to perform at higher levels. We do believe that more time, there'll be less rushing, and the ability for students to spend a little bit more in-depth time on those concepts. So the proposal would be for 7th grade, that we are pretty well on our way with. The 2 support positions, though, there's still a lot out there. I know Matt has brought up some conversation at points, and we've talked kind of in theory, but we do know that the deans of students are working at the elementary level currently We know that that equates to more students spending time in class and in school. It's helped address some of the chronic absenteeism. It allows the teachers to be, or the dean to be available to problem solve and work with students so that they're not leaving class for extended periods of time. So we have some data generated that we're going to eventually share if we move forward with this budget as is to justify these positions, at least the student support positions, which we haven't talked about in the past at Baker and Durkee.
I just have one comment because I like everything that I heard about the math and science, and I agree that has been one of the challenges is meeting all the standards prior to taking the high school course, so I appreciate that, and addressing the mastery part, which actually, since all this I haven't thought about. I guess the only question I have is we already have students who are doing very well in the model that we're doing, so I'm just questioning if any thought has been put into them having the double period and being bored and how they're going to be how it's going to be more rigorous for them.
So that's one of the conversations that the science and math committees as well as acceleration has talked about. I think the teachers as a whole and administrators that are part of that team, the guidance counselors, we believe we can do a better job with what we've been doing. Speaking specifically with science, with the rigor and the shift in thinking to that conceptual three-dimensional model, that's transformative, and that's going to require a lot more. So we do believe that students will be engaged, and that'll be a lot of the work that we do this summer is to make sure that we have the staff. The unique thing about these positions, too, is that we have said to staff we're guaranteeing that they get to be with their kids. So just like the science positions at Durkee and at Baker, the science teacher is with the lab component with their kids. We're anticipating doing the exact same thing. That was the non-negotiable when this was brought up by staff. So we're looking to do that in both math and science, which I think will be huge.
And I'm not sure if there's any shifts in math. I haven't heard anything. So what about those students who are getting that additional time? What's the plan for the rigor for those students who are already getting it easily right now with the model you're using?
So the goal is to extend beyond that. So the teachers will be working to think about projects. We've talked for quite some time. One of the board goals has been, how do we get problem-based, project-based learning back infused? And this is a great opportunity for that to happen. So we'll be looking for staff to do that, to really make it engaging for students. The goal, I know the thought is that students, with math specifically don't like math, so they don't want to be there. Giving them more time might not be a good thing, but our goal is to get them excited about math, and hopefully we'll push them to achieve at higher levels.
I was going to say that it was a couple years ago you guys had that math applications class, and this would be a way, because I thought that idea was really good, because you always get that question as a teacher, how am I ever going to use this, or where am I ever going to use this in life, and be able to extend that way would be nice. So my other question is, if they're going to be put in math and science periods, what are they not going to be able to have, and is that going to affect staffing in those other areas where they would normally possibly be scheduled? I'm not sure how it's done over at Ray.
So there will be no staffing changes with reductions. Most students have multiple study halls. There could be, and I say could because it all depends on, maintaining the structure of ECL. At one point, a long time ago, kids that had multiple classes, sometimes the ensembles occurred during the ECL time. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but students will have to make some decisions. So it might be that if they are a student that has, a full load and they want both the chorus and music, they might not be able to do the project Lead the Way, computer science. There might be some decisions they have to make, but the majority of students, currently we have I believe 224 students that are enrolled in acceleration. Their schedules have time in there where they're quote unquote unstructured for this year. Yeah. So the building administrators are working on putting that schedule together with staff, and they'll be, presenting, not presenting, but creating the schedules with that information in mind within the next few weeks.
So one of the things that Chris Denton had mentioned at a previous meeting is trying to figure out how to potentially incorporate co-teaching of some of the other courses within at Baker, math and sciences, or thinking about how to incorporate more interventions, whether AIS or RTI, whatever you want to call it. Has there been any consideration of those types of things in this budget?
So there's been conversation, but we believe we can do that within the structure that we currently have and the personnel that we have in those buildings. Because of some shifts in class size and what teachers are doing, specifically special education teachers, we believe we have some flexibility there where we can use an FTE to support math and science. I mean, we're already doing it in science, we're doing it to some extent in math, but looking to expand that a little further.
Okay. Does doing this type of schedule impact our model at Ray with teaming at all?
With teaming, the teachers or the principals are currently looking at that. So there will be teams. The goal is for students to still be a part of a group of teachers. So they will all have, the teachers will experience it. They're looking at a model, though, where there's a few more teachers added to a team. Because it's next to impossible to have, when this was communicated with the committees, because they were emphatic with the idea that they wanted access to their kids. They didn't want some other teacher, like, let's say Dave is a math teacher and I'm a math teacher, Dave working in the lab component with the students. They wanted, I'm the teacher, to be with them. So it will create some additional members to a team, but the goal is that every student will still, and teachers will have the ability to work with just their group of students. So there'll be an introduction of a potential math teacher and an additional science teacher because of the additional time and period, because they're only contractually obligated, or not obligated, they can only teach contractually so many periods at that level, 5. So it could be where a teacher is teaching 3 periods or 3 periods of like math or science, and then they've got the lab periods opposite for the additional 2, because they're only meeting every other day. But that's something the building principal is working with the team to figure out.
So this will be interesting. So if you're adding one additional math teacher and one additional science teacher, how is that going to work with the teams? Because you want all of those kids in the same team, but that teacher may be split across a few teams, I would think, based on the schedule, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
And then will those teachers, my second part of that question is, will those teachers have that opportunity to have that time to have those discussions about the same students, all those teachers in the same room?
Mm-hmm. So the goal is always to have common time for teachers between their traditional planning time, the team time, and then also where there's the ECL time. They're still looking to have that. The building principal is really working on that. We're not necessarily micromanaging that realm of it, but my understanding from what I know is that yes, the teams get a little bit larger, but we're guaranteeing those things that I've already mentioned. So they will have time to work together and to collaborate. We're not looking at a complete shift where that's not the case, because we know that the value in the teaming is the fact that they're working with those students, with the other staff members.
So the new positions won't be spread over multiple teams, or it's possible that they will, or can it be, is it going to be?
I don't know to that level of
Okay.
detail. I'm kind of looking out with Renee and Tony, and I believe that just the teams are going to get larger, and we're going to try to work that way. That's really a building level with Christina. They're in the process of running models within their master schedule school tool system, and they're starting from scratch, just like the other buildings. That's something that hasn't always happened, which is a good thing. So we're utilizing the systems that we have in place to try to make sure that students are getting the requests that they have, and that we're truly designing a schedule which is in the best interest of maximizing those student opportunities.
And one more question.
Okay.
The ECL, you said that you're looking to still keep that so students can go to other teachers kind of at the same time, like in the same period?
ECL is still being structured, or still being scheduled. Just like it is this year, it's quite possible that not every non-core teacher is available during the ECL time, so that would be consistent, but there would be other opportunities throughout the day. The goal is for the core to be made available for those students. So we're looking to definitely move forward with the 2 math and science positions. We have more information to get you and to have discussion about the student support positions. But again, all of that is built into this through breakage of our retirements. If we shift to the last page of the salaries, I just wanted to point out too, you see an increase of Durgie nurse and Ray nurse. As you recall, we did add those positions this past school year, which has been a good thing given the fact there's been a lot of illness and some of our staff have been out too. So you'll see the increase there for those salaries, which wasn't represented in our 1920 budget, even though we added it.
So we did add, that's what, when I was looking at that, I wanted to ask the question. So we did add them mid-year this year.
Actually, once the budget was approved in May, it was sometime in July, I believe.
We did approve
So
them.
we just repurposed money, and it's not showing because we've always traditionally represented the 1920 as
Okay,
board
so those
approved.
positions had already been added.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, if there's no questions on salaries, we'll move to equipment. We're looking at
Actually, Joe, I just had one more that I
Yep.
noticed. Summer guidance.
Oh, yes.
Is that just built into their regular salaries now to get rid of those
Yes.
budget codes?
Yeah, we thought
Okay, so
since
they're
we're
still
adding,
working, but,
since
I
we're
mean-
adding hundreds of budget codes, if we can take one away, we decided to do that. So that's built into their actual general codes. Onto equipment, we're looking at about a $20,000 increase for equipment, and most of that, there's some repurposing and shifting. We see an increase at Baker and Durgie specifically for some science needs, some technology needs, and so the building principals have requested that, and we feel that it's reasonable at this point. It's not, I know it's a significant increase for the overall equipment budget, but in reality, we're talking $20,000, and we feel that that's valuable. If we look at the contractual, there's about $108,000 increase for contractual. You see an increase in marching band. You see an increase with our school resource officers, the contracts. They negotiated new contracts, and so we're seeing an increase in that code. You'll also see an increase in contractual Baker of about $13,000, given paper needs, some subscription needs with Project Lead the Way and other technology-based courses. That's why we're requesting an increase there. If we move to materials and supplies, overall, about a $30,000 increase. What I'd like to point out, though, is that we've tried to equalize, or I don't know if I made up that word, but make more equitable the budget codes for the elementary schools. So you'll see McNamara stays relatively flat, but you'll see Van Buren getting a significant jump because of the fact that Van Buren now has actually a few more students currently than McNamara, so we felt it was appropriate from the per pupil allocation. And then you'll also see the same for Eldon, Palmer, and Reynolds. They're at $13,000-ish $1,000, which is consistent to their enrollments. Are pretty closely aligned. Lastly, on the next page, there is the core curricular. So there's an increase there, given some of the supplies with the new science kits and trying to work through some things with Project Lead the Way. We're looking to increase that just to replenish some of those yearly supplies. And then last but not least, on the BOCES budget page, we have about a $70,000 increase. All of the programming pretty much is staying consistent. As we've had in the past, we participate in the alternate ed high school BOCES programs, which is our Innovation Tech, Reach, STARS, and Futures programs. We pay that for the current year, so we're locked in with those seats, and we're comfortable with the seats that we've requested. And then the Career and Technical Education BOCES, just a little bit over $1 million. We're comfortable again with those programs, which are the New Vision, Career Development, and the CTE. And the nice thing is those are all interchangeable. So even though we have 105 CTE seats and only 5 New Vision seats, if a student wants to go into New Vision, we have the ability to shift one of those seats, which is good given all of our BOCES programs that have been highlighted with the changes in New Visions, from engineering to the WCNY to the construction company that was highlighted. I can't think of the name. Tracy Road Equipment, and who knows, maybe we'll work with BOCES for something at our transportation facility too. That would be a cool goal at some point. So that is the instructional budget. Other questions?
So I just want to make sure I understood. So for the 2 new positions for science and math, the data generated came from the 2 committees that said that said that there's a need for that based on our students. And okay, I just want to make sure.
They have been saying for quite some time the whole issue of time, and we've also addressed that there's some gaps. One thing I forgot to mention is that currently with our curriculum, there is some overlap that's being, well, not overlap, but there are some middle level standards that are being addressed for 8th grade accelerated students in 8th grade. And our goal with this shift is that we're going to ensure that everything will be taught, those 2 years worth of instruction, in the 7th grade time frame. So there won't be, and I'm making this up right now, but let's just say a concept in, I don't know, geometry. It's not going to be taught in 8th grade while they're taking algebra. It will be taught in 7th grade if it's part of the middle level 7th grade standards, if that makes sense. Because I know that was a concern in the past.
Can I give her an example for science, since she's a science teacher? So right now, they really don't touch much upon the middle level life science standards, except for a little bit in 5th grade. And the majority of those are being overlapped in the living environment class when they're accelerated in 8th grade. So this will enable those students to get that foundation with that vocabulary we've been talking about, with how intensive that is before they actually go into the high school course. Did that make sense? I had one question about the summer school, since it was one of my questions, and if you don't have an answer, just with summer school with BOCES, are we only allotted a certain number of seats, or however many students need that service can register? And you're shaking your head.
Yes, so we budget, and I want to say it's 200 seats if I remember correctly, for the summer school. But there's always flexibility, and the BOCES will bill us after the fact. So, there could be some shifting, and there's always fund balance built in, so we're not going to deny a student an opportunity to attend summer school. Sometimes that's gone up, other times that's gone down. So I think we got actually a refund this year because, again, that was at CNS, and typically when we don't have summer school here, we end up with less enrollment. We are looking at jointly working with BOCES so that this year the middle level summer school will be at Ray Middle School in conjunction with our own extended school year program, and then the 9 through 12 program will be at CNS, and it's possible that within 2 years that will flip back to us.
And one more related to that is just trying to catch up on that one document we got. the review classes that they talked about that the students take, is that part of this budget? Do we pay for that, or how does that work?
We pay for that, and currently, BOCES, I'm on the advisory committee for the summer school. They're looking at a redesign of that, so it's quite possible. One of the things all the schools mention is that we would host because we have a site now, we would host the review sessions that impact our students potentially here, so that they're not traveling to CNS for that, which gives us flexibility potentially with time of day as well. And they're looking at that being more of a, not every day of the whole summer, but like a crash course, because given where they're at, and they're thinking they'll be able to get more students to participate for that quote-unquote crash course. Okay. All right, so that is it for the instructional budget.
Okay, now you have trip request.
Wait, I would like to do one more thing here, just so I could pony in on
I'm
this.
sorry.
There's a couple attachments in the bottom here, Dave. Could you throw up the tax cap calculation first? Okay, this is our final tax cap calculation. It's tough to kind of see up there, but the convoluted way it's built. So 2.22% is our tax cap. That's the final version. We're waiting for the BOCES data to come in with the differences year to year. If it was like $2,300, it didn't change this very much. So the one thing that did happen is our pilot growth went up 255,000. The local capital levy growth dropped. Both of those ended up subtracting from our levy. But keep in mind that the pilots receivable in the coming school year get subtracted from your levy, and the pilots in the prior year get added to it. So there's a difference between the two. So whenever you have a new pilot come in, it lowers your tax levy because you're going to get, the whole feeling is you're going to get the difference in the pilot. That's why they do that. And the capital levy growth we just experienced, they're catching up on some state aid, so our cost next year of our debt service is going to be lower than it is this year as to the taxpayer. So more aid is going to flow in to pay that debt, even with the new debt coming on board for the project for $30 million from the 2016 vote. So I just want everybody to see that, so now we know that's what the final version is on a public basis. And then the big thing that's new for tonight is going to be the general fund budget summary. Dave, could you put that up for me, please? Yeah. Okay, now this is the columnar thing where you have all the revenue for the school district on one piece of paper. So this starts at the top. Here's the pilots. All the miscellaneous revenue comes in. So last year, if you go halfway down, you see total miscellaneous revenue. Last year our current year is projected to be 3.8 million. Next year projected to be 4.1 million. Part of that is the growth in the estimate in the pilot from year to year. That's one of the differences. Pretty much everything else stayed the same. Now you go down below that, here's the state aid increase. The governor's budget is giving us $40,331,532. Our current year is projected to be right around 38,875. Building aid is going from 4,245 to 5,401. That's the increased aid for our new building project debt that's going to go in. So our total state aid went to 45.7, up from 43.1. So we decided to appropriate the fund balance, the designated appropriated fund balance, the same, identical as what it last year at this particular time. Same thing with the use of ERS reserve to pay that bill for our ERS expense out of that reserve. Use of the workers' comp reserve of 160. Remember, our auditors a couple years ago wanted us to state the reserve we're going to use, so that's what we're doing. So our total tax levy at 2.2% is 58.9 million, which is up from 57.6, an increase of 1.2, almost 1.3 million. So our total revenue is 113 million. Growth in the budget year to year is 4.3 or 4%. Last year was 2.2. Remember, this is before we start looking at taking money out. Now that so Tiffany, I got to go in and look at some more fund balance calculations, and so right now we're $833,000 short. In other words, our expenses are that much higher than our projected revenue. I mean, last year at this time we were We were like, 1.8 million, something like that, before we started working on this. So this isn't bad considering the point we are in the budget, because remember, you have until approximately, April 11th to approve the budget, so we got several weeks, a couple more board meetings to make up our minds. Also, who knows what's going to happen when the legislature goes on and says what they're going to do. Traditionally, the governor's budget's been lower than the legislature's budget. So if we got an extra $300,000 or $400,000 from the legislature and we cut $300,000 or $400,000 from the budget, we'd be at zero. That's the way I'm looking at this. So I was nervous about the gyrations in the market last week, but we got 1,200 points back today. The futures, I was just on Fox Business, the futures are at like 600 for tomorrow, so it looks like, it's crazy. You could go down 3,000 points and up 2,500, and the net would be 500 or 600. So it doesn't look like a shock. Of course, we don't really know what's going on with the pandemic and whether they're going to declare one. So these unknowns going forward, but I don't think for right now that this is a bad position for us to be in. We just need to sharpen our pencil and go to work a little bit more, and let's see what the legislature brings us after April 1st. I wanted everybody to see this. This is traditionally the time we talk about this, is when we put the last of the budget up for instruction and technology, and now the board and the public is seeing what our projection is. And you notice up at the top, there's plenty of room for me to put other revision numbers on, and last year we had about 10 or 11 of them as we went down. Every few days we're looking at this. Oh, let's go look at this. Oh, let's go look at that. So one of the things that already dropped the price, because last week it was higher, but we did a lot of research. Tiffany did a lot of research on the BOCES bill. So the BOCES budget, because we put in like 4% a lot of those codes, well, it was all over the place, but it was, if you look at the changes, a big chunk of change came out of the BOCES. But that wasn't reflected on your last change schedule, but it would on this, because our price is lower by a couple $100,000. So those areas, as we work on a budget a little more and present them, we'll do some more of these things as we get it. So we got to go in and look at fund balance, how much is in there compared to fund balance this year. We still need some fund balance to protect program. We understand how that works, that you need $500,000 or $600,000 in the 2250 special ed to cover the cost of the children that move in. So if we have an autistic child move in, or whatever the person is, and their needs have to be met legally, then we got to pay for them somehow. So that money is in there so we don't have to cut somebody someplace else. So that's just the way we manage it. For those who haven't heard me give that speech before, that's the rationale why we have it in there. I hate to cut football because the kid moved in that needed legal services. Those are the kind of, we do not want to put ourselves in the position to make those crazy choices, because that's bad budgeting when you're forced to make crazy choices. So those crazy choices that are bad for kids and bad for the school district are protected with that fund balance. In a quick and dirty way, that's how we budget. Any questions on this? And this is going to change as we go along. So every board meeting, when we have one, we're going to have another look at this form, okay? And any cuts or any proposals we have changed to do, of course, we'll bring to you. And this is what it would look like doing it this way. This is where we could actually do it live on the screen if you want to. It's just a spreadsheet.
The summary you gave us last year at the end with all the changes that you made, I thought that was really helpful.
Yeah, we'll continue to do that. And the one that you have built into this is the changes to date, but that doesn't include instruction. So now as we start looking at instruction and other things that are in there, we're going to start having a little closer examination of those costs. All right? Yeah, we definitely will show you the changes. And finally we get to the end, we'll actually just show you where the fund balance is that we estimate, what codes it's in. Last year we had it down to just, like 10 or 12 codes, and this is the money that protects the budget. So I think we're about $2.5 million in our current budget. The goal would be, if you think about it, you're running a $114 million business on a margin of $2.5 million, which is not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. Some of the risk went away. Remember, we took out some fund balance because we didn't have to have 3.5 like we had 2 years ago, because we went to the consortium for health insurance. So that risk that our claims would rise like crazy is all gone. So we don't have to worry. If they say it's 7%, that's what it is. It's not going to be 14. So that we took some fund balance out of our 1920 budget in anticipation of being in the consortium. So as we do some of these things and do some more planning and budget management and analysis, you'll see that number change. Just a little history of how I look at it, how we try to deal with it. Thank you.
it's really not a bad place. I think North Syracuse and Liverpool are both at like 6 and 4 million.
Right.
Yeah. Request on varsity girls softball.
So this is a trip for the girls varsity softball team to travel and participate in a challenge in Staten Island on March 28th and 30th, and they will be, I believe, missing 1 day of school for this event. So this will appear on our next board meeting for final approval. Questions?
Joe or Jamie or Tiffany or somebody, do we have an arrangement or understanding with DNA Tours, or does each team or club have to do that separately?
So they work through, basically the process is that we have a listing of charter bus services that are approved through the transportation department. So when a group is looking to have a trip like this, they're to reach out to, through the athletics, to Dana. Dana works with the tour company to make sure that all of the requirements are met. They have to be, the vehicle has to be inspected, there has to be a driver's abstract, all of that. But he kind of coordinates with them. But it is really the choice of whichever booster group chooses to select as far as the list of vendors.
Right. The vendors can come and go based on their performances. You know, if they send me a driver that doesn't have a proper CDL and has a rotten abstract, you know, we have access to that database in the state, so we can go look at their driver's record. So I look at that when we're approving volunteer drivers to volunteer to drive, like the Jeep and, the pickup truck and the trailer for the crew team. So they, we scan their driver's license in, and it tells us what their history is, and then I sign off on their ability to be a volunteer driver. Same thing happens with the bus company. If they're bad, we're not letting our kids get on.
Is there some kind of regulation as to how many drivers you have to have if you go over a certain distance? Like if you're driving so many miles, you have to have a second driver?
I think if you're going from here to Florida, you have to get something like that. But if they're going to go from here to New Jersey, probably not. Yeah. So there have been times where there's more than one driver on a bus, or if it's a nationwide company, when they get to a certain locale, the other driver will meet the bus. If it's a nationwide company or covers the whole East Coast, that's what they'll do. But there are similar regulations to just like the long-haul truckers have. So many hours in the seat. They have to keep a book.
Okay.
Okay, F, Baldwinsville Central School District policies, first readings, 37,000, reviewed, revised, retire, pending.
So just, I want to highlight one thing. I know that an email went back and forth with regard to the process, so I just wanted clarity from the board. We have no problem, presenting the policies however you wish them to be presented. So what had happened in the past was for first reading, any changes to the policy would include strikeouts, anything addition was in red. If that's what you would like, we can certainly do that from this point forward. I just wanted to make sure that that's what everyone wants, and we'd be happy to do that.
Even as, even being on the policy committee, sometimes they don't make it to the next meeting as quickly. I think it's really helpful, and if I wasn't on the policy committee, I'd really like to see what the policy was and what recommendations we're making. So I would prefer that we incorporate both.
Yeah, I'm on the policy committee too, and I think the whole board, as well as the policy committee members, would like to see what has been in the past and what the changes are, rather than just be presented with what's new and not know what changes have been made.
And even if things are shared via email, like what happened this week, it's not just about us, it's also the public that needs to know, and there's no way of them knowing. So I think it's important to have both showing.
Absolutely. So we'll do that from this point forward. We'll still also make sure the policy committee gets those for review before they come to the board. So once Lynn cleans up and makes the changes based on the meetings, they'll go to the policy committee for their review, and once they say we're all good, then they'll come to the board for first reading. Other questions or comments?
Yeah, I do. I know I'm on the policy committee, and we agreed to bring this forward for a first reading. But I really think that after a lot of thought and listening to a lot of the different things that were mentioned in the last policy meeting and reflecting a couple meetings ago what some of my board colleagues were looking for, I think that we may want to consider sending 7210 back to the policy committee, specifically the part about grading. We haven't really talked about the other sections yet. That's been the focus in the spring and recently. And my reasons for that are we're doing a policy review, and I just don't feel like we adequately reviewed the policy. And it's not to say that anyone who spoke, their opinions weren't worthy. I just really started to think about a lot of the things that were stated. Keywords. One was manipulation. I think the word was really flexibility that this policy offers. I heard Matt say autonomy. I heard the things that things are changing with the state. I also heard from my board colleagues that we wanted to involve more stakeholders. And I think after thinking about some of those key words, and the laboratory component as well, and that was the main reason why we wanted the review. I think it's important to hear for the people who are dealing with this, and I think if we send this back to policy, I think there's a way to kind of work all those different things by maybe keep it as it is, because there's some people who thought it needed to go into regulations, other people wanted it to stay, some people wanted it to change. And if we put some language in there that says something about a review, not that it has to be changed, but hear from the teachers how it's going, we may find and learn ourselves that they're making it work. We may find that some it's not, but maybe, start somewhere. Not to say it needs to change at all, but I think that we should be getting that feedback every few years, and maybe we should consider that, as well as the homework piece. We haven't touched that policy yet, and that's kind of incorporated in there. We haven't touched the lab policy yet, and maybe we can look at all three of those together and see what we can work out with some of the things I've been hearing. Like with the laboratory component, there's kids who may have started the science class, but they couldn't take the regents because they didn't have enough labs, and the reasons why that may be occurring, and kind of combine those three and have a really in-depth discussion to get the feedback and improve and cross-reference those three.
So are you suggesting that teachers come directly to the policy committee to give feedback? You mentioned getting feedback from teachers, so are you proposing that at the policy committee level or here, or?
So kind of, and I think everybody's kind of working towards the same goal. Even the last meeting that we had, learning and talking or listening to Beth and Jason, teachers have a lot of flexibility that as a parent I have not experienced, and I think we talked a little bit about making sure that teachers are aware of how they can do some of those things, that they don't look at it and go, it's the 90-10. And so I think everybody's working towards the same goal. What we had said a year ago in policy is let's get a group of people together, not the policy committee, but whether it's a representative sample from the teachers of various departments, district administration, curricula, whoever, to really talk about this collectively. And actually, I think we had discussed participation of board members if they so chose to be part of that, but it really is more of a comprehensive look at it.
And maybe that's something we can discuss if it's decided that we're going to kick it back, how we would go about doing that. Would it be more effective to go by department? Would it be more effective to have individuals, teachers do it, but maybe create some sort of tool that could be used if we decide to put in policy that we'd like to have a review every few years, kind of develop a tool and see how it works and modify that tool over the years going forward, especially with the changes. And maybe have a policy in there, something in there which would help as the changes are coming down from the state. You may not want to have I guess I struggle with how specific that is, because I do like to have policies that are more broad, but if people are more comfortable keeping that language in there, have that extra language in there to allow for flexibility going forward, not just the here and now.
So at the policy committee, we heard from teacher leaders in the district that their recommendation was we don't make any changes on this policy right now. We wait to hear from the state related to how grading is going to change. And I don't know the timing on that. You know, maybe that's, 5 years in the future. I have no idea. So, but if it's coming quickly, their recommendation was let's hold on because we're probably going to have to take a really good look at the policy, at the grading policy at that time anyway, again.
But the existing policy remains as is. There's nothing to say that we're changing the way we're doing anything today. And we're not asking people to change anything. We're talking about how we want to modify the policy so that we can ensure that, because right now the policy says it's 90-10, or however it looks. I mean, we're giving no one flexibility to do anything by not going back and looking at how do we incorporate the ability to be flexible in this policy. So it's not that we're suggesting a change to it right now. As a policy committee and as a board, we should go back and look at how do we incorporate language into that allows us to have that flexibility, but instead of having to come back to the board every time for this.
So I guess if we're not going to make any changes to the policy, I'm just wondering why we'd kick it back.
Because we're supposed to be doing a review, and I feel like a lot of things we've been doing is just putting in recommendations from Erie or revising, and revising based on laws isn't the same as actually doing a review. And since we own the policy, I think it's really important to actually evaluate it and get down and see to the classroom level anonymously how it's working, because we have hundreds of teachers underneath those teachers' leaders, and I guarantee they haven't taken the time, nor should they, to speak to every single one. They may be able to go by department and get some feedback, but I don't know if that's been done. You don't know if that's been done, and we're reviewing policy.
So couldn't we do a review? So if we're not going to change the policy, I guess what I'm asking about is process, all right? Not questioning yet, hearing from teachers or whatever. But if you're saying we're not going to change the policy, then why are we kicking it back?
I meant we're not going to change what we're doing today. That's all I meant, is we're not saying that we're going to change the requirements today of what the 10% lab rule and whatever the language is. But we need to go back and we need to create language that allows us to make those changes as we go forward.
So I think what I'm hearing, I'm trying to process. I think what I'm hearing is that we have this policy. We don't want to change the language at this point. We want it to go back to the committee so that we could insert language into the policy that states maybe every 2 years or something, maybe get information from the stakeholders, which would be the teachers, if they are happy with the way the policy is. So I'm thinking that's what I'm hearing.
Although that would be changing the policy, so that would be an update where I think it was mentioned we're not going to send it back and make updates. So I think there's a little confusion. I think what you're trying to say is if we're truly just sending this back so you can look at it again, we don't need to send it back. You can look at any policy anytime in committee. So why are we sending it back if we're truly not changing it at this point? I think it's just a process question. It's not what are you going to put in there and what are you going to change. It's strictly a process thing of what are we sending it back for? You can look at any policy on the thing as a committee anytime you want. So why do we need to go through the formality of sending it back? Just put it on your agenda to look at.
Yeah, I think,
at any
no,
point.
I think you're right. It is a process. So in the past, how has it been reviewed? So when's the last time, was it 2013, 2014?
Joan, you were here during the last full review.
Right, so.
It was a while ago,
This-
quite some time ago.
Are you saying, when was this policy reviewed last?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No. So the
Oh.
language in there, and like you said, I wasn't at that policy committee, but, so like you said, so we had representatives to represent the teachers who said, you know, the language sounded okay right now. But I'm hearing from other board members that were present that there may be some departments that, I'm not sure, I don't know what you had said, so, but if we incorporate language in there that allows us to hear from the teachers every 2 years or however, I don't know, however, at least there's language in there for us to go back and just see where everybody is.
So
That's what I'm hearing. I'm just trying
so
to.
Kim's point, we're not looking to change it today. I think what you mean, Kim, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're not looking to change the specifics of the grading policy itself, but we'd like to kick the policy back to change the policy to put some language in there so there's regular reviews of the policy, because this has been put in place in 2013 and there has not been a formal board review of our own policy to know how it's working. And the importance of that way to do that is to get feedback from the stakeholders so we know and go from there. So when you say there does not need to be change, it doesn't need to be changed now, but we need to at least have something to move forward. And I think because homework's a piece of that, labs are a piece of that, and those are two policies that are farther down in the 8,000 series, we can look at the three of them together and see if we can problem solve some of the issues that we've been hearing. And frankly, one with the labs, I was pretty shocked to hear about, because that's not how it happened in the district I worked in. And I certainly don't want students to get penalized. I want to find a way to make it so they're not penalized and they have a way to get to that laboratory requirement. And we can do that with some language added to both the lab policy and the grading policy. Because it's students.
Can I just ask
Sure.
a question? So do you want the board to direct the committee to look at it, or do you just not want us to do anything right now? I mean,
I guess I'm not sure.
That's a question, because the committee, like Jeff said, the committee can review this policy without debating it here.
I guess I didn't know, because we got that email that one policy with the district and building safety plan is going to be kicked back. So I'm just following. I don't know how it's usually done, because I don't think this has happened since I've been on the board.
Yeah, so the safety committee one was pulled back based on the conversation that took place at the last board meeting. When we went to look more closely, we had just received an Erie 1 update, so we felt at the time there was no need to do that. Now, the board has already reviewed this policy, they approved this policy. I mean, it is possible to just pull it off, because it's already approved as is. And if the board wants there to be conversation with the policy committee about adding language for regular reviews or something to that nature, we can certainly look at that at a policy committee meeting between.
It was last revised July 8, 2019. If we leave it on, it'll be last reviewed March 2nd. If we take it off, it'll be last reviewed whenever it was last reviewed.
Right. It's not.
I mean, that's really the only difference.
So whether it stays on or not, even if it stays on, we can say, I mean, if the board wants the policy committee to review that language, look at possibly adding something to that and bring it back at a later point, we certainly can do that. It's not going to change whether we, I mean.
So we can go, we did first reading, and we're not going to have a policy committee until after the second reading. So just approve it as it is again, and then just get it on the agenda for the next policy meeting.
That's what the board would like for us to review.
Or we could remove it and not have it go through a second reading because we possibly want to insert that language. So either way, as long as it goes back to policy to at least discuss and pull in those other policies that are embedded in this policy, I don't care which way we do it.
And I would say the policy committee sets their agenda, right? Not the full board. So they can add anything to their agenda that they want to review.
So we've worked with district leadership, and we have a schedule set up because we are on that review cycle, and I know we're not going to make it. We can certainly add it. I just want to make sure that one of the things that's going to be added at the next meeting, which we'll talk about at the board retreat, is the Ed Law 2D, and we have to get a policy update in the student, the Parent Bill of Rights, the Student Bill of Rights updated. So that will be a focus with the policy committee April, May, definitely by the end of June. So that'll also be on the docket. Hopefully that will go relatively quickly. So that's a priority too. But I don't think it would take much to, add a sentence or two.
Well, I guess if you're asking what the board wants to do, I'm okay with the committee's autonomy in setting their own agenda, just like Jeff said. So I don't think we need to spend a lot more time here discussing how that agenda gets set.
Now, I guess just in general, though, I guess I would question, like, if we're going to make this policy specific to have words that say we need to revisit it every 2 years or whatever, I'd almost question why don't we put that in every policy, because shouldn't we just be reviewing them all at a regular cycle of time? Now, I fully realize that has not been done in the past, that we can fix that as a general rule, to put words in either selective or all of our policies to say we should review it every 2 years may not be needed, is all I'm suggesting, that's all. But the policy committee can discuss that and
yeah, these haven't been reviewed this thoroughly in many years, and we're finally catching up. I think the plan is, when we finally finish, is to start back at the beginning again and just keep going through it. But I think this grading policy is a little bit different animal, and it should be different for every subject area, because how does an English teacher compare with a science teacher with the labs as far as the policy goes? I don't know. So I think we as a policy committee, we don't want to upset the apple cart and delay important things, but I think we could discuss this again and maybe come up with some wording that at least temporarily will make it a little more flexible. And then I think moving forward, we need to hear from the teachers, and not just a couple of representatives. Every time we want to hear from teachers, we hear from the same ones over and over and over again, and we never hear from all of them what their thoughts are. So I think it's going to be important moving forward to get some input from the complete science department, math department, and so on.
And Jeff, I appreciate that question, because I think, a lot of full policy reviews usually take about 3 to 5 years, and that's one thing that Eric said, a 2-year review is going to be very rigorous, and I don't think anyone can anticipate all the policies we've had to change with just the new laws being passed in Albany itself and all the regulations being changed, at state ed as well. So I feel like we're trying to do this review very quickly, as well as keeping up with the new things coming at us, and it is a lot of work. There's some policies that, can't change because they are strictly based on law verbatim, and they cannot be changed, but there's just some that are more, the ones that are more at the local discretion, which are in the 7th and 8,000 series. I think we just need to take a different approach with those than we do the other ones.
So there are some very important special ed policies on this list as well, and I know we spent most of the policy committee talking about that one particular policy, and I just had some questions and some things that perhaps the committee could take a look at and consider. So can I just give you a list here? Okay. So policy 7640. It is the policy that I think outlines the entire special ed process, right, the IEP process. I'm sorry, I'm just going to scroll down here, just find it. Oh, I apologize, it's down here quite a bit, quite a ways. Okay.
This 7640, Joe, is that the one where it was written in red, but there's really no changes to that one? It should have been all black. Is that the one that I emailed about, or no? It is all written. What?
I'm sorry, Lynn made that change for this. So this, if my memory serves me, was the full adoption of an Erie 1 update, as is. So this is complete recommendation from Erie 1.
Okay. So in the first paragraph, it says that each student with a disability will have an IEP in effect at the beginning of each school year.
Mhm.
I don't understand what the beginning means. Is that before the school year begins? Is that within the first marking period, et cetera? So, you know, you don't have to tell me now, but just, I was thinking, I realize this is an Area 1 policy, but just for clarity, it might be nice to know.
It would be before the student starts the school year.
All right. The parental consent area is a little bit confusing because it says parental consent must be obtained, but then it mentions overriding parental consent. So I was just a little confused about, you know, is it that parental consent must be obtained, or in what instances or circumstances would that be overridden? The individual evaluation, so just in terms of the formatting, you've got development of individualized education program, then you've got this functional behavioral assessments, behavioral intervention plans is underlined, and then you've got some stuff under that that's not underlined, like individual evaluations and some other things. So I wasn't sure if all of those were intended to be subsections under functional behavioral assessments, or whether they were just brand new sections. And then there's a section where there's a lot of detail on training the individuals responsible for implementing the IEP in terms of how to access it. And then we just inform them of their responsibilities, so no discussion about training to actually implement the IEP. So there's a ton of training on how to implement it in the electronic system, but nothing about how do we make sure everybody knows what's in here and knows what it means, and the teams are all on the same page.
That was one of the questions I actually asked Rocco that I was able to ask before we rushed out of there. Because my concern was, I actually not concerned, I was impressed with the FACS teacher at Ray who asked about how to read an IEP so she could better serve her students last year. And that was one of the questions I did ask, if all the teachers in the regular ed classroom have an opportunity to go through the IEP with someone to know how they're going to be assisted and what they need to do to help the child. But would that have to be in here, or is that just part of the administrative regulations, that that's part of your training for new teachers and any teacher who has a student with an IEP that doesn't have a co-teacher in that classroom?
And then there's, just have one more thing. 7615, Section D, talks about grouping, and we go through a lot of, oh, wait a minute here. I'm sorry.
Christy, which policy was that?
7615, Section D. It says that the CSD shall provide information to those teachers and professionals who arrange instructional groups for students with disabilities. Information shall include physical, psychological, and social information, as well as achievement test results. And I'm just wondering whether we want to limit it to achievement test results, or taking the students' other measures of academic performance into account in terms of the grouping. Just whatever the educational professionals think should be there.
So we can check, we'll check with Rocco on that. Most of that information would be made available anyway to teachers, correct? I'm looking at Dave as a special education expert within the IEP anyway. So we will talk to Rocco.
I'm sorry, Matt. But yes, there is the present level of performance and information regarding the academic achievement and all that, and the functional needs of students. But I understand what Christy's saying about that. We can talk with Rocco about that language.
And so we'll come back at the next meeting with answers to those questions and if there is any changes, we'll let the board know, hopefully by Friday in the weekly letter, so that you have access to review before the second reading.
So Chrissy, just to clarify, for that one part with the teachers getting instruction or some sort of professional development, you want to see that specifically, you would prefer to see that specifically stated in the policy itself. Is that what you're looking for?
No, I'm asking for the policy committee to talk about it, and I assume Rocco would be there. We go into a lot of detail about training to work the electronic system, but, nothing about actually implementing the IEP itself. So it may be stated someplace else in a procedure or, whatever.
That definitely came up, and I'm sure that Rocco spoke to that, but I think you're right, we should clarify. I just have a process question, though. So if we had questions as a policy committee, typically we would take the questions back to the policy committee before we presented. Would you like us to pull these off of first reading so that when we can come back, instead of just the policy committee, to make sure we get answers to your questions and then bring them back in another grouping?
Because the policy committee is not going to have an opportunity to discuss this until April 20th, maybe. So we can, and this would be on for so we can pull it. It was, just so I have my notes right, it was 7615 and 7640.
Although potentially these are just clarification on some small wording changes, right? We're not really changing the policy. Yeah. Does that really need to go through about another month of cycle time?
I'm just asking the question.
Yeah.
So
I would think minor rewordings or something, or adding a clarification doesn't need to go back to the committee, then back on a first reading in like we're talking about a month, month and a half.
Well,
but
unless
that's just my
unless
opinion.
Rocco says that nope, we don't train anybody, and which we know that's
if
not going to be the answer, then
if his
it's
response
not,
creates a whole bunch more work or something, then that's different. But if he just says add, these 3 words and you're done, then it seems like we wouldn't have to go through that.
So we'll review with Rocco.
Just my opinion.
We will review with Rocco. We will get the information out to the board. If it's drastic changes or clarification, we will pull the policies with the policy committee review. If not, they'll stay on with a minor adjustment, which will be communicated in the weekly letter. Okay? Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Textbook adoption, first reading.
So we have a series of textbooks that are on for first reading, and if the first is a psychological science 6th edition, it's for AP psychology. The second is a scholastic bookshelf. These are various books for all of the K-5 elementary schools, so students have the ability to read text on level. So we're using some textbook funds to support that, because if we don't use the textbook funds, we potentially have the aid going away because we haven't spent our full allocation this year. And then Words Their Way, additional support for students in grades 4 through 6, which somebody mentioned earlier. Alex did in the 10-year review. So teachers are utilizing that. So these will be on for second reading and final approval on March 16th.
Moving on to new business. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the Baldwinsville Central School District Policy Series 3,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, revised retiring pursuant to the attached. Do I have a motion? Matt? Jeff, second. Questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried 8-0. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the trip request for the Baker High School students and the Model United Nations group to travel and participate in the U.S. Diplomacy Museum donation event in Washington, D.C., March 12 to 14, 2020, pursuant to the attached. Do I have a motion? Jim, Matt, questions?
Yeah, so given the discussion we had about coronavirus, and if there are areas, you know, right now Washington State has a pretty significant outbreak that they're looking at. Obviously, it's already March 2nd. If there were significant concerns about travel within the country because of, you know, the person that just went to Iran actually was on public transportation, which fortunately she wasn't, what would we do in that case? I mean, would you just let us know that, I mean, we obviously would know that there's an issue and then just bring it forward so we could discuss it?
At least, yeah, I mean, it would have to be an emergency situation. So I would say if it was at a level 3 or the CDC was saying that we shouldn't be going to those areas, we would definitely let you know and make a determination at that point. You know, we're obviously hopeful that that's not the case, given that this is occurring, you know, within a week and a half.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it. I mean, because it is changing so rapidly, what's going on.
Yep.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried 8-0. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the trip request for the boys varsity lacrosse team to travel and participate in the boys varsity lacrosse Albany spring trip to Latham, New York, March 27, 28, 2020, pursuant to the attached. Do I have a motion? Jim? Jen? Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried 8-0. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the following textbook adoption to be used in all district school buildings K-2 ELA classes pursuant to the attached. Do I have a motion? Jim? Jen? Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried 8-0. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the legal notice to conduct an annual meeting of the qualified voters of the Baldwinsville Central School District on May 19, 2020 for the purpose of the Baldwinsville Central School District 2020-2021 annual school budget vote and Board of Education election pursuant to the attached. Do I have a motion? Jim? Kim? All those, that's not roll call, is it? Okay, all those in favor?
It says Matt McDonald is present in the letter here.
And Brian as well, so they'll have to be removed.
We can edit it to take those out. We did this a couple weeks ago.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried 8-0. Resolved that the Board of Education amend the Baldwinsville Central School District budget's 2019-20 general fund budget by adding $8,527 to expense code A1621-406-41000, $5,802 to expense code A5510-450-20-1570, and $3,734 to expense A1621-450-420000, and a total of $18,063 to revenue code A2690. Do I have a motion? Jim? Jen? Jamie?
Yeah, this is to allow us to repair these vehicles that were involved in various accidents, and we'll fix these ourselves. But as opposed to expensing the money out of these account codes that we weren't planning on or budgeted to do, we're asking the board to amend the budget so we can spend the money out of those account codes and recognize the revenue which came to us from our insurance company settlements.
Okay, so this is just a process thing.
It's just a process
We didn't
thing.
use these budget codes, so we just need to
We're using
incorporate
these
them.
budget codes to write the POs to buy the
Yep,
parts to
got
fix
it.
these vehicles.
And they weren't in the budget.
And they were not in the original
Got it.
budget. That's because we weren't anticipating 3 accidents.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried 8-0. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the disposal of surplus instructional material from Reynolds Elementary School pursuant to the attached. Do I have a motion? Jeff? Denise, second. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried 8-0. Resolved that the Board of Education approve bid number 384 athletics equipment and supplies pursuant to the attached. Do I have a motion? Denise? Jeff? She's getting quicker. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried 8-0. Resolved that the Board of Education authorize property tax settlement regarding the Sedgwick property proceedings and all the use of the tax surcharge reserve to pay the expense pursuant to the attached. Do I have a motion? Matt? Jeff? Jamie?
Okay, as you know, back last June, we established our tax cert reserve based on a letter that we got from Attorney Brody Smith from Bond. Included in there was the possible settlement we could do with Sedgwick. Now, it's come in under what he estimated, but we still, a settlement of this, you know, it costs us $250,000 as opposed to the $70 it's going to cost us. So these are just ongoing things. That's why we have the reserve. And by you allowing us to use the reserve to pay for it, it won't affect our Fund A, our ability of the general fund that the voters approved to settle this. Now, these are a continuous series of them.
What are we settling?
Okay, the people that own the Sedgwick, hold on, it's an apartment complex, filed a petition some time ago to have their taxes reduced, okay, because their assessment was too high. So we end up joining these things along with the town of Lysander and other parties involved to try to protect the school district's interests, because our taxes are higher than the town's, and it's in our best interest to protect the district's interests. So we pay the attorney to go have an analysis and negotiate with these people, and you allow me at the reorganization meeting to work with the attorney to come up with a reasonable settlement in the best interest of the school district. So the attorney and I agree with him after going through, and his memo is attached on the executive side is what his legal rationale is and all that stuff, and why he's recommending we do this settlement. It's to avoid future litigation and other costs in court, which could be multiples of the money we're being asked to pay now. So we're approving a resolution that's on the public side that you can see that would settle the issue. I'm recommending along with the attorney that we do it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be on your agenda. I would still be arguing with the guy. But I don't think it's unreasonable and avoids a future risk. As soon as you go to court, bad things happen, since we can't control it. We can control this.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried 8-0.
No, you don't have to do a roll call on this.
Resolved that the Board of Education nominates Joan Reeves as Baldwinsville Central School District Representative to serve on the Board of Education of the Onondaga, Cortland, Madison.
Oh, it does say it. Okay, I misspoke. The letter does say roll call vote.
That's what I thought.
You want to call the roll, Tiffany, on that one? Pardon? Oh, here it is. Okay. I got it. Okay, Joan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Christy?
Yes.
Brian is absent. Denise?
Yes.
Jim? Yes. Jennifer?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Kim? Yes. And Matt?
Yes.
Okay, so it's 8-0 and 1 absent. Thank you.
That's okay, Jamie, we understand.
Yep.
Budget time, you're under a lot of pressure.
That's it.
Resolved that the Board of Education nominates Joan Reeves as Baldwinsville Central School District Representative to serve on the Board of Education of the Onondaga, Cortland, Madison County Board of Cooperative Educational Services, OCMBOCES, for a 3-year term beginning July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2023. Do I have a motion? Jim, Matt? Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried 8-0. Board roundtable.
I have a quick question. Is anybody planning to attend the New Vision open house tomorrow?
I was just going to ask that. I thought you might.
Well, I'll be there, so I was going to, if any board members or anybody from Baldwinsville is going to attend, I was going to see if I can make arrangements to do a bigger tour if you guys want to see it. But I'd have to make pre-arrangements if you're going to, planning to be there.
I would have loved to have gone. I was really excited about it, but I have a work event, so I'm not going to be able to make it.
Okay. And that's okay. If nobody's going to be there, then I don't need to go through a bunch of security stuff. So, but if you are, or change your mind, let me know.
It should be good.
Joe, is there a deadline for signing up for that? It's probably already, I know that we were supposed to let Lynn know, but my schedule keeps changing with my boys' schedule, so if it's not possible, it's fine. Jeff can just tell me about it.
I think they just like to know ahead of time for security reasons.
Right, because of where you're going.
We would be able to potentially let OCM BOCES know, but not necessarily Jeff for the more private.
Yeah, because we were all told that we had to make sure that we signed up for security reasons.
Yeah, I think it's probably too late. I mean.
No, that's fine, because as of now, I can't go, but I kept holding out hope that I would be able to go, so I was just asking when the drop dead was, which I figured probably already passed.
Anything else? It's a round table. Okay, resolved that the Board of Education enter in the executive session to discuss the employment of particular individuals in collective bargaining. Do I have a motion? Jim? Second. Jeff? Denise. Sorry. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried 8-0.